All right, it's December 25th. Merry Christmas to those who celebrate and happy holidays to all, because today in this video I wanted to dive into the Montreal Canadiens and Kent Hughes' big gift to the team. No surprise here, it's a name we've been vaguely discussing over the past little while. Admittedly, we haven't really been talking about him much ever since he got traded over to the Habs, and that is exactly why we are making this video right here. Because for now, before the Montreal Canadiens go out there and inevitably start making more moves, we are diving into the masterful trade that was the Alexandre Carrier trade. Because the recently acquired Montreal Canadiens defenseman has had a really good opening few games with the team. Sure, he's not going to go out there and win the Norris anytime soon. He's not going to go out there and get a 70-point season or anything like that. He's not going to be somebody that pops out in the most spectacular, world-breaking kind of way. But what Alexandre Carrier brings, and what he was supposed to be, it's pretty good right now for Montreal. So what I wanted to do was dive into the profile, talk about how he's been playing, talk about how good the trade has been for Montreal. Starting out with the profile here, Carrier is 28 years old, 5'11", 174, right-handed guy. Signed on till the end of 26-27, making $3.75 million a year. Now, the funny part is, I say that he's not going to have a 70-point season or whatever, but he actually is at 2 points in 3 games for the Habs right now, averaging just about 18 minutes time on ice per game. He actually is getting a little bit fewer minutes in Montreal compared to what he was getting in Nashville, but with 2 assists in his last 2 games, you definitely can't go out there and complain too hard. To help us out with how exactly he's been performing, though, I wanted to go out there and dive into this article published on Montreal Hockey Now. This was written by Mark Dumont from yesterday. Canadiens analysis: early results from the Carrier trade are encouraging. Mark Dumont does a great job in describing what's going on here, and this article will be linked in the description below. It starts out by just describing the differences in what we are seeing out of these players, of course, replacing Justin Barron, primarily an offensively minded defenseman, with Carrier, who is more defensively minded, was always meant to add a little stability to a very chaotic blue line. And we're only discussing 3 games, a very limited sample, but the early results are worth exploring. And again, that contrast is kind of interesting when you acknowledge that even though Carrier is more defensive than Justin Barron, he actually has been producing some points. Anyways, the first major improvement, as written about in this article, that surfaced with Carrier's arrival was Cayden Goulet's return to his natural side. That's not to say Goulet was a fish out of water when he was playing on the right, but if the Canadiens have any chance of developing Goulet into a permanent first-pairing defenseman, playing him on the left is a necessary step. Now, I don't disagree with this idea at all, but I do kind of question, just for, you know, hypothetical Canadiens discussion's sake, if you're a Habs fan watching this video, what are your thoughts about the long-term left-handed defense pairings on this team? Do you think by the time 2028 rolls around, the first pairing left-handed D on this team will be Lane Hutson or Cayden Goulet? I think it's very fair to say that you can diversify it in a particular way. Maybe Goulet gets 25 minutes a night on the left-handed side. Lane Hutson, maybe he gets only 20 minutes. But maybe he gets 90% of the time in the offensive zone. Maybe he gets a significantly higher amount of power play time than everybody else. By the time, hypothetically, 2028 rolls around, I don't think Mike Matheson's going to be on the team anymore. And so if you were to try to project where everything goes over the next little while here, is Cayden Goulet your number 1 D-man? Just some food for thought here, heading into the next point on the article. Dumont goes out there and writes, speaking of which, Cayden Goulet's stats have improved tenfold since being paired with Carrier. It helps that the Habs face the struggling Red Wings on 2 occasions, an important detail worth keeping in mind as the schedule becomes more challenging, but it's also fair to say that Goulet's underlying numbers have rarely reached this point of success. Together, Carrier and Goulet have controlled over 60% of the shots, 67% of the expected goals, and 67% of the high-danger scoring chances, an area of weakness for both the Canadiens and Goulet. Now, I really like that Dumont writes about this, mostly because Cayden Goulet's development as a top-pairing, defensively-minded two-way guy was always going to hinge as to whether or not he would have the support necessary. Sure, playing him on the right is okay, but having a strong, defensively minded veteran like Carrier on his pair gives Guhle that sort of insight as to what needs to happen in order for him to be able to accomplish that. He was always an interesting prospect, Guhle was, who really came into his own over the past few years, especially in terms of his two-way play. And so for Carrier, a guy who can kind of rein in what Guhle needs to work on and just kind of be a model example defenseman, that's super beneficial for what Guhle can eventually do. Let's go out there and read some other commentary here. While playing alongside any defensive partner not named Carrier, Cayden Guhle's numbers plunged to a sub-45% level in all three categories, with his share of expected goals and high-danger chances landing closer to 40% than 50%. In other words, the combination of having to play with questionable D partners, not to mention playing on his offside, has led to underwhelming results when Guhle has been on the ice the last couple of years. And that's kind of ridiculous. Like, for all the good that we see out of Cayden Guhle, it is kind of shocking to me that some of his numbers have gone down to less than 45% in terms of expected goals and high-danger chances. I mean, it essentially means that when Guhle is playing with guys that are not really all too great and Guhle is playing on his right side, it means that opposition are getting the majority of chances for. And that's not great for a defensively minded D-man like Cayden Guhle. Anyways, this video isn't really about Guhle, it's about Alexandre Carrier. Mark Dumont goes out there and talks about some other things that Carrier is able to do. He has managed to produce the best individual results by a defenseman from an underlying numbers perspective, though we should note that the entire team has played quite well since the trade. There's certainly a correlation between Carrier's arrival and the team's improved results, although we can't really suggest causation, at least not yet. Consider this. Prior to the Carrier trade, the Habs were ranked 29th in the NHL in shot share at 46.2%, 30th in expected goals at 44.6%, and 30th in high-danger scoring chance shares at 43.8%. Since the trade, the Canadiens are 5th in shot share, 8th in expected goals, and 8th in high-danger scoring chance share. And I will say as well, the emergence of Patrik Laine, how much offense that guy has been able to produce, has certainly bled into some of these numbers as well. But for Alexandre Carrier, I mean, his numbers, the way that he has debuted with the team, he joined at a very good spot. And it's either you could say that he happened to be lucky in his addition to the team at this time, or that his addition in itself led to some of these numbers. It's all up to you after all. That's not just a minor improvement, Dumont writes, that's a sign of a team that has been playing playoff-worthy hockey for the last stretch. Again, we must guard against making any long-term proclamations about Carrier's value. In 3 more games, we'll have double the sample size, which should give us a better handling of the situation, especially once the Canadiens face teams that are fighting for a playoff spot. And so right now, I wanted to go out there and just introduce this topic to the forefront because for all of y'all YouTube audience members who are going out there and watching the Canadiens, trying to take a look at what's been going on since the trade, it seems like this has been a huge win for Kent Hughes, and it's been a good gift heading into the 2024 holiday break. So, Habs fans, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Alexandre Carrier's play for the Habs in 3 games, and how much has the team improved? I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.